Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. I'm Jeremy Stolniker, the Executive Director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, here with our President and Founder, Chad Robichaux. When I say here, it's all virtual, but we live in a virtual world. So we're all here, all together, all the time. So he's, again, hiding out somewhere, undisclosed location. And we have a special guest today.
The bunker.
Yeah, he's hiding out in the bunker. Again, I will give you the address for the right amount of money. So if you need it, just let me know. It's a guest with us today, a special guest. Anytime we can interview and spend time with Marines, we love it. It's a special day for us. Sometimes we have to let guys who are in the Army come on our show. We let some Navy guys come on once in a while, even a SEAL here and then, because we have rules that we have to follow. But we prefer Marines, and as much as we can get Marines on the show. And we got two great guys with us. They have their own podcast called 2Marines1Mic. 2Marines1Mic, and we're going to put a link in the YouTube notes on how to find them, and you need to listen to them. But Phil Krizmanich and Wade Waddick, and they do a podcast, and it's a good podcast. But what they do, kind of full time, their money making endeavor is Patriot Sports Nutrition. And one of the things that we talk about often through our programs at Mighty Oaks and on this show is how really the purpose of life is not to consume and take in and get what you can for yourself and then run away with it. The purpose in life is to take what you have been given, the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then turn around and pay it forward for others. And really, as I understand the story of Patriot Sports Nutrition, and these guys served in the Marine Corps and then started a company so they could continue to serve other military folks and meet them where they are physically, emotionally, help them get back on track or continue the path that they're on. And really, this is the kind of story we love. This is about paying it forward and helping others. And guys, appreciate you spending some time with us. I know you're very busy guys, and appreciate you taking some time with us. So thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Chad.
Really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to say, though, on our show, maybe some of our listeners, they hear 2 Marines and a mic. And for those who know Marines, like we do, that's a scary title, like 2 Marines with a microphone. What the heck? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Should we trust this? What are these guys going to say?
What are they going to say?
You're
How
absolutely
are they going to use that microphone? Where are they going to put that microphone? What's going on there?
Exactly. Is that a playoff of 2 girls, 1? Yes, it is. But we have a lot of fun on our podcast, guys, and we just had Chad on. That episode will be releasing probably around the same time this one will. I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but we like to provide, like you said, Jeremy, a message with depth and weight behind it, that people could take our experiences, good and bad, that we've learned and either go a different direction or take the same path that we did in the cases that we were successful.
Yeah. Hey, start with your story. I want to get into how you kind of pay it forward and the things you're involved in now, but take us back to the beginning. How'd you guys maybe grow up? What are some of the events in your life that shaped you to a place where you go into the military and move you through that?
Yeah, so Phil pointed to me, so I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
I was born in Chicago, but really raised down in South Florida. And my best friend, we're both athletes growing up, and his dad really had a big impression on me. His dad is a Marine Corps veteran. His dad is still to this day at 75, the scariest human being I've ever met in my life. Fought Larry Holmes as an amateur. We grew up in a boxing gym, and he still could do like 25 dead hang pull-ups, and he's a big dude. So he left a real big impression on me because my parents got divorced when I was a sophomore, but my dad traveled prior to that. So I kind of grew up in just a one-parent household. And I was just inspired to always want to serve. And for me, there's no other option. Growing up with him as a role model, the Marine Corps was the only option. My mom cried about, seek out the Air Force. And I was like, no, if I'm going to go, I'm going to be challenged through the few, the proud. And I loved it. And it's absolutely a transformative experience for me. I attribute all my success to the Marine Corps. The way I am, I'm just hardwired. All those attributes that you learn, the attention to detail, the punctuality, the professionalism, the pride in what you do, and then obviously service, serving people. So I served 4 years honorably. I got out and have always been into fitness. So I was working at a gym, and then, through that evolution, I ended up opening a gym 9 years later, and we just hit our 10-year anniversary on Super Bowl Sunday. And so my whole life has been serving. And then Phil became a member of the gym, and I'll let Phil pick up from
and
there
I'll
and
get to
back
that
prep.
point because that's a really interesting the way that things line up. So there's a series of events that had to happen in order for me to meet Wade, and a lot of those are big life decisions that I made. So when I was a kid, I grew up right here in South Florida. I wasn't necessarily ever described as a good kid. I wasn't a good student. I wasn't a well-behaved child. I like to get into trouble more often than not. And, I had tons of, I got kicked out of high school twice, 3 times. I ended up having to go to this little pay for your grade school so that I can get an actual high school diploma.
You sound like someone who's describing a resume to apply for the Marine Corps.
Yeah. This is it. Like I was coached by the recruiter so that I would be eligible. Yeah. And it was I had a great, my parents were awesome, growing up. I wouldn't say I was a spoiled kid, but we had everything that we needed and a little bit more. I just had something, misfiring, I imagine, in my brain that just made me do, it's fun to do hood rat things with my friends at that age. And so I kind of had this moment of clarity that, my life was kind of going down the drain. And if I went to college, I would waste all of the money that my parents had set aside for Florida prepaid, and I wouldn't do anything. So I don't know where this responsible decision-making came from, but I decided that I was going to join the Marine Corps, and I would be the only Marine at this point in my family. My dad was a Vietnam veteran in the Air Force. As a result of his service, he got really sick. He ended up passing away from cancer in 2010. Wow. But he had the opportunity to watch me become a Marine and change the way that I was right before his eyes, which was really amazing for me. Got out. I was in the infantry in the Marine Corps. I was with 2-4. My first deployment, I went on a MEU. My second deployment did 9.5 months in Afghanistan, Helmand Province, Moose Kala, in 2011. The end of 2011, early 2012. And I got out of the Marine Corps completely separated less than 2 months after returning from that deployment. Yeah. So I went from 100 miles an hour to 0 very quickly, and my life went downhill fast. I started getting in fights all the time out in the streets, drinking way too much, doing what I like to call the geographical cure, where I would move from one place to another, hoping that I don't follow myself there, basically. Yeah. And so I went from Southern California to Northern California to South Dakota, back to Florida, up to Jupiter, Florida, back down to where I am now. And finally, I was in a position where I was making decent money as a secondary wholesaler for a pharmaceutical rep company. And everything on the outside seemed great until, I kept waking up and feeling about myself. Outside, everything was great. Inside, I was completely destroyed. And at that point, I kind of had this second, life-changing realization that my life sucked and it was my fault. Mm.
Did anyone speak into that? I mean, did you come to that conclusion on your own, or did someone?
I had hints. So my and she's okay with me saying this, I think, and if not, we'll figure it out. But after my dad passed away, my mom struggled with prescription drugs and alcohol, and I had to send her to rehab. I had to send her to treatment, and she's been sober for 4 years actually this month, which is really cool. So I kind of had I was coming home from work, and she'd call me. She'd be like, "Phil, I got my 30-day chip." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know what that means, but cool." And then she'd be like, "Oh, I got the 60 days clear." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't care." All I was concerned with was myself at this point, and I was still going really hard, partying and doing extracurriculars, but everything was okay because I was paying my bills. So I woke up one morning in a bed that I didn't recognize, staring at a ceiling fan that was not mine, with an empty bottle, an empty bag that used to be full of colored white substance, and I was it. I called my mom. I said, "Mom, I need to go to rehab." She said, "Phil, I don't think you need to go to rehab, but you can go where I've been going." So I did, and I never left. I found a community of people. One who actually ended up introducing me to Wade at the gym. He said, "Man, you got to come check out this gym. It's a group fitness gym." I go, "Dude, I'm a Marine. I don't do group fitness. Come on." And he's like, "I'll just call him." And I was like, "That's weird." And he called him on the phone. And, I got suckered into to coming to a class on, I think it was a Saturday morning, and I fell in love immediately. I thought I was in decent shape. I got my butt kicked.
Yeah.
And, over that next year, Wade and I have become really close friends. And eventually we decided that, our values, our morals, our ideal lifestyle really kind of matched and added up together. And we decided to go into business, and we started Patriot Sports Nutrition. And shortly before that, we started the 2Marines1Mic podcast.
Yeah. So I'm always interested in this. We through our program, we talk to thousands of folks who have been combat deployed, and they come home and they have issues and deal with things like all of us do. I think a lot of times people think that when they leave a combat environment and they come home, the problems that they have are related to combat, when often the problems are either something that they took to combat with them, or it's not the combat that's the problem. It's that they've separated from that community. They've separated from that brotherhood. They've separated from something that gave them purpose and meaning and direction and something they understood. And then they're out there trying to figure it out on their own with no real guidance, right? I tell my story sometimes, which is I was a Marine. I was in Iraq, part of the invasion, came home June 1st. We were at Camp Pendleton, back from our deployment. July 1st, I was out of the Marine Corps. And I was a mess for a year. Was it because of my combat deployment? I think it was because I was like thrown out on the street and I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't thrown out, I walked out. But you know what I mean? And I think that sometimes we get that confused. And that's an important message for people to understand. You can't blame an event for your issues. There's a process behind that.
Because a lot of times people don't. I was going to say, just a lot of times the individual don't understand that. They don't understand why they feel lost or why they feel frustrated. And since they can't figure out what it is, they'll point to a bad event in their past and kind of tag it to that.
100%. And I can elaborate on that a little bit on my side, man. It was, obviously, on a combat deployment, there are things that people don't want to see, people don't want to do. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
And I could say with 100% certainty that it wasn't one single event or all of those events combined that caused me to go down the rabbit hole that I went down. It was exactly like you said, Jeremy. It was that identity change. It was the loss of purpose. It was a combination of that with, 4 of my very close family members died in the 2 years before that. Never dealt with it. The only way that I dealt with it was going out and being with friends and kind of avoiding it.
Yeah.
I never, and another part of that was guilt. My dad was super sick on my first deployment and I was halfway across the world, I wasn't there. I didn't know any of this until I got back, coupled with, fears, that I had from like childhood that I didn't even know that existed. It was a huge gap in my mental health, that had nothing to do with actual combat stuff. It's just what happened was after that combat deployment, I felt like I was absolutely invincible and nothing could hurt me and I would never get in trouble for anything because I'm a veteran, right? People, I'm going to lead vast enterprises. People owe me the world. So I'll do what I want.
Yeah. And veterans, like in America, this is something I think we as a veteran community have to deal with. And people need to keep saying it, that this idea that the veteran is a sacred cow in the United States that no one can touch. And if you haven't served, you have no right to say anything to a veteran. It is really stupid and really destructive.
Yeah, it's harmful to our own community when we position ourselves that way, because when people, are exempt from helping us or coming alongside of us and speaking about the things that, we claim are sacred. And it's this entitlement mentality that everyone's adopted. And I just don't believe the veteran community should embrace that.
We heard you guys speaking about that, like policing our own a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
What does that look like to you guys, policing your own in your community, in your veteran community?
I tell you, what, when Phil started coming to the gym, like immediately I was like, I have a retired major who's about 70. No one really knows how old he is, but
no one knows. He goes out of the area.
He also would give an 18-year-old a run for his money.
Right.
But anyways, so, when Phil first started coming to the gym, like instantaneously, all the Marine Corps veterans I have there and friends that come to the gym, I introduced them to.
Yeah.
Because you have to like forge those relationships through that transition process, and then B, we have a better probability of calling out a veteran on their bullshit versus someone that has never served.
Yeah.
Even though I see what you're saying, like any civilian has every right to call you out on your bullshit because everyone needs some level of accountability. But I feel like we kind of understand one another, and I could read through if I'm being fed, a line of BS.
Yeah, there's no pulling the wool over my eyes specifically, man. Like I might let it go just because I don't know if it's seriously damaging to someone, but at the same time, it's like I've been through a lot, man, and I don't say that as a victim because what I deal with now, policing your own looks like now is like nobody owes you.
Right.
That's what I didn't know, and that's what I know now. It's like I am not entitled.
Do you think one of the reasons we don't police our own sometimes is because we don't want to acknowledge that in our own lives? Like veterans that walk around with, I'm a combat veteran, I've got PTSD, stay away from me, or I'm gonna explode on you. Like that's the guy that should be policing other people. But sometimes I feel like if a veteran says something to another veteran, it's an acknowledgement of his own insecurities or fears or shortcomings.
Well, now it's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
Now I brought it up. Those are actual words that came out of my mouth. And now I would be irresponsible or held accountable if I didn't deal with my own problems that happen to be in the same nature.
Yeah.
And that hurts, man. That's not something that's easy to deal with, right? How many things in our personal lives still do we let go that, we see other people doing and we just don't say anything because of exactly what you said, because I might be doing some version of that or some level of that in my own life that I'm not ready to give up yet. The pain's not great enough in that area.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I agree. And I feel like I never want to blame. I never want to point fingers, but what's really interesting to me is as these men and women transition back to the civilian world, if they grew up in some of these households today where the parent is just protected out of the kid, and then they leave the household and the first place they go is, for example, Paris Island, and then they go to combat, see horrific things, and then get out. How is that person supposed to be remotely equipped to handle any of that?
Right.
Because,
yeah.
And that's what, so, but once again, I don't want to blame society, but we're moving in a direction where no one wants to say anything to offend anyone. And everyone wants the 8th place trophy, which serves no one. And we know that from a psychological standpoint and a scientific standpoint.
The soccer participation trophy is what it's actually.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, it makes me so hard on my daughter's 5. It makes me so hard on her because I see it, around us. But I feel like veterans have a better job of calling out other veterans.
It's our responsibility, man.
And it is a responsibility.
Yeah, this is I guess I'll call out society a little bit because, our society and our culture has really gone away from a personal responsibility. This is what we essentially deal with at Mighty Oaks with, some incredible warriors who did incredible things, and been through tragic events. And the key to getting them on the other side of that is the acceptance of personal responsibility. It's not demonstrated in our culture. We have political activists and pundits kind of speaking against it and movements against personal responsibility. Look, as bad as some things in our past might have been, the historical events of our past don't lead us to being where you are, waking up in that room that you don't know where you're at. I know from talking to you, you've seen some bad things in combat, but the reason you ended up in that bedroom staring at a ceiling fan you didn't recognize wasn't because of those things. It's because of choices you made. And and
bad ones.
Yeah, exactly. And if we find ourselves standing in a position where we keep pointing back to, well, I'm doing this because of this. I'm making this choice because of this. I'm struggling with this because of this. You can't change the past. You can't change the things you've been through. What you can change is the choices you make moving forward in response to that. And that just comes down to personal responsibility, saying, yes, some crappy things happened to me. I've experienced and seen and done some things. I made some mistakes. But, moving forward, I can't point to those things. I have to point to the choice I'm going to make moving forward. Yeah, and personal responsibility is just not common right now.
No, dude, you have the opportunity to shape your future by the mistakes you've made in the past, not the obligation.
Right.
That's a choice, man. You can
say that one more time. Go through that one more time.
You have the opportunity to shape your future by the mistakes you've made in your past, not the obligation. You don't have to change. Right. You're right.
Why is that? I've never heard it put that way. Why is that distinction so important? That's pretty deep, man.
Right. Yeah. And this just came off the top of my head, man. This is pretty deep. Super philosophical. And I've never said this before. I just thought of it. Because you have the opportunity. You can make what you want of your past, right? If you want to sit there and you want to dwell in your own garbage, that's on you, man. Like that's 100% on you. That's another choice.
Right.
You have the opportunity to use the decisions and the mistakes that you've made in your past to propel you and shape your future, but it's not an obligation. You don't have to.
Yeah.
No.
You don't have to do that, right? It's suggested.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and that's where people get stuck, right? They don't see it as an opportunity. They see it as an obligation.
I'm guilty. I still do it.
And we say, well, I can't do it. I know I'm obligated, but I can't do it. No, you have an opportunity there.
Yeah.
Like get up off the ground and go forward.
Every day you get up, you have an opportunity.
I mean, we're all exposed to wisdom and truth. In our program, Mighty Oaks, we're a Christian faith-based program, so we present guys with what we believe the lives that they were created to live, the model. People say life doesn't come with a handbook. We believe it does. We're just not following it. And but when you've been exposed to truth and wisdom and good guidance, being exposed to that doesn't really change anything. It's how you respond to it that changes things and the decisions you make based on that truth. And you can reject it, like you said. No, but like you said, you can choose to reject it. And most of our lives, we do reject wisdom and truth, especially when it's personal to us. And
yeah, that's right. I think the conversation around society and what can society do, it's really important to recognize that we live in that culture or society that says you're all winners, everyone's winning. You just show up and that's good enough.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. It's important to recognize that, because the other side of this whole equation is what we call resiliency, right? It's understanding that if you're not prepared to deal with the traumas that you will inevitably face, then you're not going to deal with them well. Again, my story is mine. We all have stories, but when I came home, it took me almost exactly 12 months to get myself to a place where I was actually moving forward instead of hanging on to the past and blaming everyone in my life and screaming at my wife and kids all the time. And the reason it took me 12 months instead of 12 years or whatever is because I did have a good solid foundation. I had a good family. I had a community around me, and they helped me move through that faster. And I think that's resiliency, right? It's understanding you will go through things. There will be a recovery period. You will have to deal with stuff. But if you're prepared ahead of time, your time from brokenness or falling down to getting back up and moving forward is going to be a lot less. And I think that's something we need to talk more about is that resiliency. Be prepared for what will inevitably happen in your life.
And how do you do that? You do that through every single day. Just like you go to the gym to build up your body, what are you doing to train your mind?
Right. And what are some of the keys to that? I mean, what do you tell people? You got a young kid, he's getting ready to enlist in the Marine Corps. I have these conversations all the time. You guys do too, I'm sure. But
we work with the recruiters down here.
Oh,
they say, hey, if a drill instructor yelled at me, I just start laughing. So that's the first thing they always say. I'm like, okay, all right.
That's going to turn
out.
That,
but here's something to think about before you do that, right? What do you tell these kids before they go? How do you prepare someone who's going to deal with maybe not just military trauma, but life trauma?
Go ahead.
I mean, we work with them mostly on the physical side, so we're not really getting hammered so much those questions. But we do have one that's getting ready to go to try and become a Marine Corps officer, and we're pretty blunt with them.
I tell him he won't make it all the time.
We're pretty blunt with them
all the time, and I tell him why. I don't just say you're not going to cut it.
Yeah,
I tell him, I said because you've decided to train with individual. Like there's 4 Marines at the gym that are more than capable and more than
one Army guy, but yeah,
right. But I'm saying Marines that like have been there, done that, and that are willing and capable to train him in what we know. Like this isn't a guess or speculation. What we know it takes to become a Marine, let alone a Marine Corps officer. Right? We've all either been or been led by Marine Corps officers.
Marine Corps officers really are the glue that holds the whole thing together.
They are.
As a former Marine Corps officer, so
yeah, exactly.
I was like, wow, I've never heard anyone say that before.
So, sir, let me ask you this question, sir.
Don't provoke him.
Don't provoke him.
I didn't want to bring this up, but if you could stand up when you're addressing me, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah,
continue. Yes.
But if like, how would you feel, and would you ever allow yourself to be more than first place in any sort of physical activity or drill or exercise that you're doing with your Marines?
More than first place.
Would you ever allow yourself to fall out, to fail?
Do anything less than that? No, absolutely not. No.
right? Like that's the standard that you hold yourself to.
Yeah.
Even us as enlisted folk, we pride ourselves on being not only physically fit, but mentally sharp, right? Like I don't want to be the only dude that doesn't remember what's under the tarp in a Kim's game.
Yeah, sure.
Like you become the butt of ridicule in an infantry barracks. Like that's never fun deal, especially when you're a boot.
Yeah.
But we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and the more prepared you are to be held to that standard before you go, like what we're offering, we know is gold to him. But I don't think that a lot of the kids and men that are going to take on this venture of becoming a United States Marine really understand what that means.
Right.
So we try to break it down as best as we can. It's like, dude, like you're not going to make it. Like I'll teach you. I'll show you the way.
Right.
That's exactly what he tells this kid. You're not going to make it.
I do. Right off the bat, you're not going to make it.
And the personal responsibility aspect of that too, right? I mean, particularly when it comes to
love, for sure.
Is as a leader, you're responsible for what happens. I've said this so many times. I don't enjoy running, but I've run my whole life. And when you run with a platoon behind you, you can do things that are almost superhuman, right? Because I am not going to fall out. In fact, I'm going to run up that Camp Pendleton. I'm going to run up that fire break, and we're going to do this stuff. Well, if I'm by myself, like that's not happening because I'm not going to run that fast. That fire break is
Alpha shelf, microwave, first Sergeant's Hill, like that's
those are my
spots.
It's a personal responsibility decision, right? Exactly. You're exactly right, and it's a mindset.
Well, you talk about this kid, and obviously I don't know this kid, but I know people in general, and most people want advice. They ask for advice and they want guidance, but they don't want the hard things, right? When you tell them what they don't want to hear, that's when they reject it. I mean, people ask us for advice all the time, not fitness advice, but life advice. And so we offer what we know to be wisdom and truth, and what we know to be hard decisions. And it's funny, they ask for it, and then you tell them, and they're like, "Yeah, I didn't want to hear that." Right. Do that. That's hard.
There's a certain level of pushback that's to be expected. But at the same time, like, I feel like it's just too much, like, oh, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to train with somebody that's has no experience with anything that I'm trying to accomplish in my own life. And that's one thing that I learned, man, was that, one, I don't give unsolicited advice. And if I do, I tell people to stop me in my tracks. Two, I only accept and take advice from people that have been where I want to go, or have been where I've been and aren't where I am anymore. Like people that have a very particular skill set, knowledge base for what I'm trying to accomplish in my life.
Yeah, that's right.
I take that advice with gold, and that experience with gold.
Yeah, it's sometimes too late. You get to a place where you realize, man, I should have been listening, and then I can't go back and relearn that, right?
I got a question for Phil. Kind of backtrack a little bit. When you reintegrate it, right? When you reintegrate it, this is a question that we talk about on our program. And when I say reintegrate it, you were a civilian before, you was a Marine, and now you're reintegrating in civilian life. Would you say that your transition was hindered more because civilians didn't understand you, the civilian world didn't understand you, or you would say it's more because you didn't understand that world, right? You didn't understand civilians, you didn't understand the civilian world.
I would say it's more than that I didn't understand myself. And I say that because I did everything in my power without drawing attention to myself to make sure that civilians didn't understand me. Like I blocked them off.
Yeah.
Girlfriends, friends. I mean, good thing one of my buddies I got out with, we lived together and we did the same thing. Like we forged an alliance of the veteran Illuminati in Pacific Beach, California. And we would just, raise hell. And then we would raise hell and then shut down. As soon as the questions started to come, as soon as the consequences started to come, as soon as the accusations started, fingers getting pointed, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. You wouldn't get it, man. You don't understand. You don't know me.
Yeah.
And it was really that I didn't know myself. I didn't understand who I wanted to be now without this, Marine Corps identity anymore. And I had really no idea. I was scared. I had no idea where I was going to go in my life.
Right. We isolate ourselves and then point the finger outside of our isolation to the civilian world and say, hey, you guys don't understand. And you feel like you can't reintegrate because of that. And I see so many veterans just kind of stuck there. And not to pick on the VFW, because I know there's great VFWs out there. There's amazing people in those circles. But I look at kind of groups like that, and that's just one example of how guys can get together, form their own little circle and bond, and are scared to go outside of it, and then stand in the middle of that circle and point to everyone around them and outside of the circle and blame them for their circumstances.
So
easy, man. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish up. And
no, I was just going to say it's easy to blame other people.
Yeah.
So talk about Patriot Sports Nutrition. What are you guys involved in? You do fitness training, but you also have a sports nutrition line and a lot of stuff that you're involved in. So what's the company about, and maybe kind of the background? I know you guys talked a little bit about that, but.
Well, we launched on July 4th. What better day for Patriot Sports Nutrition?
Did you do that on purpose, or did it just happen to be July 4th?
Oh, 100%. No, 100%. I've been putting on a race down here in South Florida called Devil Dog 5K. Hoorah, Semper Fi. And it's a pretty big undertaking when you own, like, my gym's 3,000 square feet. So we're kind of like a CrossFit, but we're not a CrossFit. But that's like our competition in Orange Theory and things like that.
You are CrossFit. So, you just don't say CrossFit every time.
No, we're really not. We're really not. we don't do any of the movements those guys do, but no knock on them. And I've always been, no matter what, we've always done stuff for the community. So whether it be MS, cancer, PTSD, it just goes on and on and on. There's always been some level of giving back to the community. And then when Phil and I had a discussion about, launching a supplement company, a big component of it was, okay, let's grow this thing on a national and then hopefully international scale to make an impact, not only by delivering great nutritional products and helping people achieve their fitness goals, but also giving back to our veteran community and really helping out the men and women that are suffering here. Because I think it's great that people do a lot of stuff about sending free stuff overseas, but those aren't the people isolating themselves that are homeless, that are hungry, that are really suffering, and that make up that statistic 22 a day.
Yeah.
We're mission driven.
So your gym, is it primarily veterans in your gym, or is it open to anyone?
Not even close.
I would say the same percent that make up the national percent is the same that we have in our gym.
Yeah. So sports nutrition is Chad could talk to this a lot better than I could, but kind of a controversial area, right? So when you guys jump into that, I won't say what makes you different than everyone else, but for those in our vast audience that are looking for a sports nutrition solution, why should they come to Patriot Sports Nutrition?
I will give you the solution.
That was my infomercial voice, by the way.
That was a very good. You and Wade need to do a TV commercial together because you both got the narration voice.
Is there more?
There's more.
So what you're asking is why supplements? How did we get to supplements? We could have done everything else. Wade's already has a successful gym that we could have just piggybacked on that. And we've thought about that stuff, right? Yeah. One of the main things that brought us to where we are today is I've been taking supplements for a long time, probably longer than I should have. I'm always looking for an upper edge, for, the newest pre-workout powder that's going to give me sick pump. What I got sick of was looking at the back of a label after I feel like garbage after taking something, and I'm trying to figure out what's in it. And I see proprietary blend, or I see 9 gazillion things that I have no idea what they are.
Right.
I don't know how much of that's in it, and I don't know why it's in there. So what we've done is, and Wade's in the same position, and Wade's been taking supplements longer than I have just because he's a little bit older than I am. But
man, you're nice on.
I was. I'm trying to be an adult today. So we passed me the pre-workout. Cool. So this is our pre-workout powder. It's called AT4. If you are a Marine or served in any combat arms branch of the military, you understand what that is. That is a shoulder fire rocket launcher, fire and forget. And we call our pre-workout that. So what's different about our products, number one, is our label. Everything that is in our products in the correct dosage is right on the back there. We're fully transparent. If you want to know what something does, we're very, very talkative about the ingredients of our products and what they do specifically and why they're in our products. So we thought that the industry needed a little change, right? Not only are we mission driven, like Wade said, to give back to our veteran community, and I'll add a side note there, we give back to organizations and companies that are actually giving real resources to veterans, and at a high level, like over 85% of that money that comes in goes right back to the veterans.
Sure.
And we're super adamant about that because, like Wade said, it's not about the people that, it's, buy one and we'll send one to a vet in Afghanistan. I'm like, those dudes may enjoy pre-workout a whole lot, but I bet the dude that's got a gun in his mouth sitting on his couch right now crying his eyes out because he doesn't know what he's doing, needs money and help a lot more, right? It's not just about the dollars. It's about getting, mental health appointments. It's about keeping families in their homes. It's about having access to jobs, right? Because we don't want to play the victim card anymore, right? We want to be part of the solution. So that's what Patriot Sports Nutrition is all about.
So a lot of, and I'm sure we all have opinions, maybe strong opinions on the Veterans Administration and the VA hospitals and so forth. But one thing we could all agree on is that the solution most of the time for mental health issues with veterans, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a myriad of others is drugs, right? It's just medicate more and take more pills. And we have folks who regularly come to our program taking more than 20 medications a day that they've been prescribed. They're not fixing the problem, but they're masking it and so forth. Does that drive what you guys do at all?
I was a guinea pig, man. That hits home for me real hard. Like I almost have tears in my eyes right now. I didn't know like where to go, man. Like I was so sick. I said this, I was working right after I decided to make that decision to change my life, man, about 4 years ago. I was working at a buddy's restaurant. I left the job. I started from scratch, man. And I was serving tables at a buddy's breakfast place in Fort Lauderdale, and we had been friends with him and his family for a very, very long time. So I'd have conversations with his mom, and I was on this medication from the VA. I'd be on it for 3-4 weeks, and then I'd find myself getting like super irritable or like mad, and she would see it because she works for a therapist here in Boca as well, and she would see it, and we would talk about stuff like that. And finally, I would go back to VA after like dealing with that for like a month or so. And they would be, okay, that's not the right dose. Try this, try that.
Yeah.
I went through like 7 different medications in like a 6-7 month period. And I felt so much worse that finally I didn't wean myself off, which is dangerous. I don't suggest this at all. Please don't do this. I stopped taking everything. I started to talk to other people that, again, have been where I was, that aren't anymore and are happy in their lives. And I started to deal with the stuff at the root level rather than trying to mask it. I don't take one prescription drug today at all. In my life, awesome.
It's crazy because those drugs mask, the emotions and all the other stuff, and they get you to a place where maybe you can cope. But the problem with that is functionally we're designed to emote, right? We have emotions. And those emotions may be painful at first, but they bring us through a process of healing. And if you mask that or push it down, you'll never get there.
Yeah, you numb the body's natural process to reacclimate, to recalibrate, and to heal ultimately. And you can't feel, you can't really heal. And this is a challenge for a lot of the guys that come to Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, man. I would say the biggest blessing that I have in my life today, man, is being able to feel my emotions. And the biggest curse that I have in my life today is being able to feel my emotions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. How much does a healthy body help with all this? Because I'll tell you, we have guys who come to our program and they're going through, real stuff. And I'm not trying to downplay any of that. It's real stuff. But sometimes, the answer is like, bro, you need to lose 50 pounds and start walking a little bit and put the M&Ms down.
Yeah.
And that'll give you the energy you need to deal with some of this stuff. Sometimes I think it's just physically so broken down, you can't do what you need to do. Yeah,
I'm depressed if I sit around for more than like 5 hours. I'm like, I'm depressed. It's definitely physical things a major factor. I'm sure it's got to be important to you, Wade.
Oh man, we talk about that a lot with all the programs that we run. Like it's a symbiotic relationship, right? It's the mental health and physical health. You have to have both. And I think a lot of it goes back to, you could say put the M&Ms down, which is true, but I think a lot of it goes back to like, we talk about morning routines on our podcast. Like and I just read this because I'm reading an amazing book. It said, as someone studied all high performers, didn't matter if it was athletes or billionaires or what have you, it was like a staggering stat. Like 92% of them all have very specific morning routines. They get up at a certain time. This is something that would resonate really well with veterans that are trying to struggle to hit their stride, is like get back into those patterns that are self-serving. I get up at 4, I listen to something inspirational, or I meditate, or I read 5 pages out of a self-help book, and I write down goals. I read my goals. I have affirmations. All these little things are going to help drive the body to go back to adopting fitness, because you need to be physically strong and mentally strong, because we found out that stronger people are hard to kill, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah, hard to
That's
kill.
what they say, yeah.
But absolutely, and more importantly, like to piggyback off of that is, we spoke to probably the oldest crowd we ever spoke to on Monday.
This is absolutely. I'll tell you the story after.
But
how
when I speak to law firms or corporations or in this specific demographic, these are all retired people here in the beautiful Boca Raton.
they've been retired for longer than I've been alive.
Probably 101. But I said, look for smaller clubs. Like if you're a veteran listening to this and you're struggling a little bit, find a CrossFit or find a small club in your area and go check them out, because you're going to have a different level of camaraderie, brotherhood, sense of community, sense of purpose, which is something that we've touched on when Chad was on our show. But you're going to connect with those people. There will be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 veterans there too that really truly understand you. But man, joining something small like that is so much different. We have people tell us at our gym that they base where they buy their new house off of being close enough to stay at our gym.
Yeah.
Like, is that crazy? Like, we have an attorney that's getting ready to be empty. She's like, I want to move to A1A, which is 7 miles away from our gym. And she's like, I just can't buy a place on the water because then it just alienates. I know 7 miles doesn't sound that far, but it takes like 35 minutes, in traffic time to get to us. But people are, that's the type of impact that, these people could find in fitness, which we all know is super important in a small box club. So that would be,
which is community, right? They're not talking about fitness, they're community. Yeah.
It's really community.
It's a group of people, especially at our place, man. Like Wade's created something that's absolutely incredible. So if you're listening to this and you're in South Florida, make sure you stop by, man. We'd love to hang out with you, do a little workout, and just see the community that's been built there, man. It's unbreakable, number one. And number two, it's like a group of such understanding and compassionate people that are there to help you get better too.
So military folks, I think, generally are maybe a bit more have maybe more addictive personalities than others. They really embrace things and they hang on to them. So fitness can be one of those things too, right? So how do you communicate? And I'm assuming that you communicate this. How do you communicate that the fitness community you have and the people you're around and the folks who show up at your gym and the people who want to buy a house close to the gym, which I completely relate to, because everyone that we work with trains at Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which is right next door to our office. And the reason we picked this space was because it was right next door to Carlson Gracie. So
that's not true, by the way.
Not true.
Not true.
It's kind of true. Anyhow, so I walk over there, I train, I come to work, right? But sometimes that community can become the purpose, right? And I don't think that's healthy either. There is a balance there. Do you communicate that to folks who come through, or is that just something you let them figure out on their own?
That's a good question.
That's a good question, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you what I've seen from the outside, because Wade's probably a little biased here. Like coming in, man, that's what I needed. Like I needed to be surrounded with people that loved the gym. But what I see with the members specifically, and this is from a member of the gym perspective, like I started, the group of people there are professionals. Like they're professionals in most aspects of their lives. It's about, like, you don't walk into Evolution Fitness. By the way, we've won. Well, I'm going to say this next thing, and you're going to see why I'm saying this. We've won the Gym War Challenge in our area against, I think it's like 10 or 12 other facilities, like 3 times in a row now. Like the results are absolutely staggering. But we don't have like a ton of like the Musclehead gang. So it is a very geared gym, right? We're there. We're going to work out. We're going to sweat. We're going to exercise hard, and we're going to go and we're going to use that to continue with our day. Now there's a few people here and there. Like I spend too much time there. I know that, but I'm also like working sometimes. I'm lifting. But I think there's a good balance, man. I think that there's whether it's said or not said, I think it's just understood there.
Yeah. I think first of all, that was like a really challenging question to kind of navigate and answer perfectly. But I think I don't address it with the individual. B, they're in an environment that at least gives them a fighting chance to figure things out on their own, because they're in a healthy environment. They're switching the addiction, which we know is not healthy. You still have to go in and tackle some of those demons and work through that and process through that. And you cannot do that alone. But at least they're in a healthy environment. I think also, like what Phil was saying too, is that when you're in a small box club and you're doing these workouts that are very challenging, and we have a huge class 5:30 in the morning. Like these are regimented people. So you're around people that are, like you said, that are kind of drawn to military, like they're addicted to fitness. It's the regimentation. And if you can get around that, and like we always talk about, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends, right?
Yeah, sure.
So if you're around that, it just kind of rubs off on you, and it could be inspirational, but at least they're in an environment that swapping addictions isn't healthy, but at least they're going to be there to be able to work through it in the process,
They're not sticking a needle in their arm while they're there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I think a lot of gyms, you got guys sleeping out in the parking lot, right? Waiting for it to open so they can get in. That's their whole life. It doesn't sound like that's the environment you have where you guys are.
It's not.
No.
Yeah.
This is like, I'm an attorney, I'm a doctor, I'm a surgeon.
Right.
I'm intelligent enough to know that if I want to live a longer life, I need to exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've created an environment that is healthy, that gives them the tools they need to move forward.
100%.
So here's kind of maybe a final question. And I know you guys deal more kind of with the physical, but also the emotional, and I would even say spiritual, reaching beyond that. For each of you, you got a guy, a girl, someone sitting across the table from you, and they've experienced some level of trauma that they've allowed to just kind of eat their lunch, right? They're making bad decisions. They're doing the wrong stuff. And before you can get them in a class, before you can get them on the right supplements, before you can get them to make the right decisions, you got to motivate them. So what do you say to that person? They're broken. They're hopeless. Somehow they end up talking to you. What do you say to them to get them back up and get them to move forward again?
Oh, he's pointing at me.
No, and that's all.
Again, I'm going to start with, fortunately, I deal with that pretty often. Unfortunately, it's usually in a very specific sense, right? It's either a veteran that's struggling with PTSD, mostly afflicted with, some sort of alcoholism or drug addiction on top of that. And that's usually what I'm presented with. And this happens on a consistent basis, man, because I think that the purpose of our life is to serve and give back.
Yeah.
That's what matters to me, right? So when I have people come up to me and ask for help or spill their guts, it's usually in a situation where I'm uniquely qualified to help them because I've been there.
Right.
I don't always have that unique qualification, right? But for the stuff that I deal with on a regular basis, I am going to be more comfortable talking to somebody that I know, again, has been where I was, has felt how I felt, and doesn't feel that way anymore. And I think that bond is unbreakable, right? Like the bond that's between Marines, right? I'll talk to another Marine, a qualified Marine, about Marine stuff, right? We'll say Marine stuff. But I'm not going to go and tell my mother about, stuff that happened, overseas. But I feel like I have a burden that's been lifted off my shoulders when I'm sitting in confidence with another Marine, the same that another person that struggles with drugs and alcohol feels when they're sitting across the table from me, because I share that I've been where they've been, and that they could tell me anything that they want because I've probably done worse.
Sure.
And I've probably been worse off. And I really set that comfort level, man. And we talk stuff out, right? There's every reason to better yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that works, man. And obviously I have a kit of spiritual tools that was laid out for me, by somebody else. So I find it very necessary in my own life to give back what was freely given to me, to other people that need it, that want it, I should say.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Wade, what do you say?
First and foremost, I think I would ask as many questions as I could to really understand specifically what this person was feeling in their life. But the one thing I want to try and convey to them would be that you're not alone.
Right. Right.
And most importantly, in order for anyone to help you, you have to understand that, and you have to allow some other people to help you get through it. Right. And then you have to help the person discover what's their why. You have to have a purpose.
Yeah.
We all had a purpose in the military. And one of the big things why vets struggle when they get out is because they lose that identity and lose sight of having some sense of purpose. And that's why I think a lot of us are drawn to give back, like Mighty Oaks and what you guys do. And because you want to serve, so letting them know that they're not alone, because you see that a lot with people battling depression, whether it be PTSD, depression, or they're veterans or not. It's just going at it alone, you're not going to be successful. I think we know that, and I think you guys know that. And then helping them find some sense of purpose. There's just a lot of people out there just floating around, not really haven't found something, but might need someone to lead them there.
Yeah.
Or in the I need to go find myself realm, which I think is complete and utter BS.
Yeah, good luck.
Make a decision, right? When the pain gets great enough, I say this often, when the pain gets great enough, you'll change. You'll make a change when the pain gets great enough. And sometimes, some of us aren't fortunate enough to see the pain get great enough and we end up dying from it.
Yeah. And, what are we, like 54, 55 episodes, and we drop an episode a week. So we are over a year doing it. And it blows my mind how extraordinary some of the stories are from the individuals they have on it, like Chad and like Rudy Reyes, and, one bad decision and they're not here doing the things they're doing.
Right.
And I'd say the past month, it's inspired me more to amp up what we're doing with Patriot and to amp up what they're doing and reinforcing that we're doing something positive, because I'm hearing these stories, and I was never in combat, so I don't suffer from PTSD other than working alongside Phil every day. It's been traumatic, but it's motivated me and inspired me more to really make a difference, because I think Chad, understanding his story and spending, now 2 hours with him and Rudy Reyes, and these are guys doing like really, really, and yourself too, Jeremy, like really, really amazing things, and they almost weren't here. So I take it as like a responsibility with what we're doing to try and help these individuals here. And, one last thing is just know that you're not going to be successful alone, and don't isolate yourself. Reach out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Guys, if people want to follow you, and I would certainly encourage them to, how do they do that? What's the best way to stay in touch with you? And we'll put your YouTube link in our notes on YouTube. But how can people reach out to you guys?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, I'm active through the gym's Facebook, which is Evolution Fitness Boca, and then my own personal, which is just my name, Wade Waddick, and Facebook the same.
Yeah. And our companies, so we have a 2Marines1Mic podcast page on Instagram, the number 2, the word Marines, space, the number 1, the word Mike, MIC. And you can find me at Phil Krizmanich on Instagram, at Fill Up My Cup on Facebook. We're www.patriotsportsnutrition.com. And just to close out, I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to say this, but I think that it's important that, and this might sound really soft and weird coming from a vet dude, but if nobody's told you that, if you're listening to this and nobody told you today that they love you, man, like I love you, and I care whether or not you live or die. So take this stuff seriously, man. This is important stuff. And
this is the reason we're all doing this, right? Is because we care about people. People don't understand the expense, the time, the energy, all of it that goes into doing things like this. You guys are doing it. We're doing it. Others are doing it. It's not a big money-making endeavor, right? We do it because we care about the people that we serve with and people we may never know. But people do care about you. That's why this is happening.
Love it.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having us on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the time, for sure. And we'll talk again. So thank you for what you guys are doing. And for those of you that are watching, thanks for watching the Mighty Oaks Show. For those of you that are listening either to the podcast or the radio show, hopefully you've been able to hear the whole thing and enjoyed it. Jump over to our YouTube page, and you can go there. You can subscribe. You can find us on YouTube. Look for the Mighty Oaks Show. You'll find us. Subscribe there and hit that little bell. That will be the notification and let you know when new shows come online. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
I'm going to go take some AT4 and run up a mountain.
Yes.